Hey, it's all with another video brought to you by Starbucks. No, this is not a sponsored video, but when you're mooching off their internet for the past couple days, you just can't help but be grateful. If you're new here and you enjoyed yourself, please hit the like button to help me out and subscribe for more of this and all things Warcraft. Today I'm going to respond to a statement made by Ian and the folks over at Blizzard over Titanforging, a system which for some is a bit of spice in an otherwise mundane world of repeatable content, and to others it is literally
the devil.
The statement from Blizzard is the summation of all the usual talking points of the system, to maintain a bit of excitement about running the same content even if you've already obtained the same base level item from said content. But the first sentence is all that we players, fans, and critics needed to hear, that it's not going away. Alright, I'm over it, it's not going away, but neither is the salt. For the sake of moving along to the main topic, I'm going to simplify the major critique of Titanforging with this following statement. RNG sucks. Put progression back into the hands of players. Fair enough, right? Let's respect the fact though that not everyone feels the same way about Titanforging. There are uneven sides on the topic whose opinions ought to be acknowledged. Having opportunities for a chunk of WoW's audience to get nice things thanks to luck is, I would argue, nice. And this has little if anything to do with the upper echelons of WoW's more skilled and accomplished players. We're going to design the framework of a replacement system for Titanforging that will nail on two key points. One is to encourage players to keep playing, as I'm sure Blizzard and we would just like to shut up and do. The second is to give more power to the players when it comes to progressing their gear. But Soul, you've done videos like this before, haven't you? And nothing's come out of it, right? Yeah, this might sound like I'm standing on a high horse, but I find this to be much more fun than letting my emotions get the better of me. So, Titanforging, gone. What's going to replace it? In my opinion, the most ideal solutions that have been going around the internet have been about a balance of deterministic rewards and that sprinkle of RNG, MSG, whatever you want to call it, just not too much of either. This is going to be a hybrid system of upgrading gear with some luck to keep things a little bit exciting. This idea is inspired by a few of Battle for Azeroth's current systems, like the Scrapper, Crafted Gear, and the PvP Conquest system. So let's see what we can cook up. There's one more thing to take care of first. One of the pillars of modern-day WoW is Blizzard's desire to bring players moments of surprise and excitement. But this philosophy of design has bitten the developers in the ass more than enough times, so let's just throw this entire statement out. Let's set the thought aside while we explore some other possibilities. Because I think there are enough moments of surprise, and I think that Blizzard is slowly making this apparent with some of the systems in the upcoming 8.1 Tides of Vengeance patch, with PvE currencies making a return. On top of this, we can have an upgrade system that is tied to each season or tier of an expansion. Let's talk about how this is going to work. On day 1 of the new season for raiding, PvP, and Mythic Plus, players participating in most forms of content, from emissary rewards to the daily heroic dungeon to raid boss kills, the PvP and Mythic dungeon cache, and of course, etc., will receive a currency. And for the sake of familiarity, let's call it Valor. Just like Valor, or for a better reference, Conquest in today's Battle for Azeroth, there's a maximum amount you can obtain every week. And you can spend this amount on any piece of epic quality gear you obtain in that season, not from the previous season, and you can't bank Valor for the season after. Every piece of gear from the season is going to have a finite number of upgrade levels, something you might be familiar with from Mists of Pandaria or Warlords of Draenor. However, these upgrade levels are going to look a little bit different from before. Let's demonstrate this as accurately as possible. In the upcoming patch 8.1, the new base item level is going up from 340 to 370, while the maximum item level is going up from 395 to 425. Using multiples of 5, that is 11 increments or upgrade levels to get a piece of gear from 370 to 425. If I were to do, say, a Mythic 0 or a Warfront and I get some gear, its base item level would be 370 with 0 of 11 upgrades available. If I did a normal raid and got a piece of 385 gear, well, that piece of gear then has 0 out of 8 upgrades. If I did a mythic raid and got a piece of Warforged gear, that gear will either have 0 of 1 upgrades, or maybe none at all if it happens to Warforge all the way up to 425. Because sure, let's go ahead and keep Warforging in up to 10 item levels or 2 upgrades. Without boring you too much with the numbers, the vision of this upgrade system will be to allow a player to upgrade all of their gear so that their average item level boosts them 1 tier higher than what they are currently wearing. So for those who just do Raid Finder and Warfronts, they can use upgrades to elevate themselves to Heroic level, Heroic to Mythic, and at the very top where the elite PvPers, the Raiders, and the Dungeon Runners are, they can definitely have a best-in-slot set to sport around and give them an advantage in the next season when this process begins again. Because there's only so much Valor that can be obtained during the course of an entire season, you're not going to see a situation where players can upgrade every piece of 370 gear all the way up to 425. However, keep in mind that players who keep completing certain events that get them heroic level gear, like the Warfront caches or the Mythic Dungeon weekly event, can get that much closer to that Mythic item level. Their gear choices, however, will obviously be very limited by comparison. So, just how are these upgrades going to work? If you did the math based on my earlier statements, players should be able to pump 3 upgrades into every slot of gear and voila, they are going to be 1 tier higher than they would normally be. Players can also pour their upgrades into a favorite trinket or a ring that has a crazy good stat, but this will be balanced somewhat. Valor requirements will be expected to rise based on the current item level of the gear. This is just a loose example, but upgrading 370 gear will cost like 100 Valor. Upgrading 385 gear will cost 200 Valor, and it scales up accordingly. The intent here is that a raider who gets a piece of mythic gear early in the season is probably not going to be able to upgrade their piece that week. Meanwhile, players doing Warfront probably can with the gear that they obtain. This kind of scaling somewhat contradicts my earlier statement that players can upgrade 1 tier higher than their average item level. The gap between normal and heroic item level will be much narrower than heroic to mythic, but I'll leave that up for discussion. This gets us to the Valor points themselves. How's that going to work? A big critique of the earlier Valor systems is the pressure to farm for Valor each and every week or risk falling behind because on the next reset you couldn't get that Valor back. Inspired by the BFA Conquest system, now that missed Valor will always be obtainable anytime during that season. If Bob couldn't play for a week, that doesn't mean he missed out on 1,000 Valor. Again, these are pretend numbers. He could always catch up and make that 1,000 Valor back, doing a few extra quests, dungeon runs, or etc. Every player will always have the same maximum amount of Valor to play with during a given season. There's always a chance that under whatever circumstance, a tier or a season lasts longer than it should, resulting in excess Valor being distributed. What if you pump upgrades into a piece of gear, but something else drops that is by every metric better? You're not going to have to worry about losing the Valor you spent, because if you scrap that piece of gear with upgrades already in it, you're going to get all that Valor back, with no penalties or diminishing returns. This is inspired by BFA's current profession system that allows crafters to make mythic level gear with random stats. If the stats aren't to your liking, you can scrap the gear and the critical reagent, Sanguicell, will be fully refunded. Scrapping upgraded gear in this situation will work pretty much the same way. There are some drawbacks or even flaws to this sort of upgrade system, all of which can be addressed with discussion and redesign and reiteration, but here are a few topics. This sort of upgrade system reinforces the idea of having to pause to possibly go back to town to scrap gear, re-implement upgrades and enchants before resuming play. That can be a bit obnoxious. Certain audiences who like Titanforging won't be happy that this new form of upgrading will bring back grinding in a big way, despite the leniency and the flexibility of Valor points. Certain other audiences may not like the idea that those who play at a heroic item level can potentially have a similar item level as a mythic raider, which is more likely given that this is a system of deterministic reward and not just luck. However, given Blizzard's apparent lack of fear to polarize its own audience, I wondered to myself, why not? Let's just give this a try. This new version of upgrading puts the power back into the hands of players. It still makes gear drops from every source still feel meaningful. It encourages a minimum amount of playtime and activity while rewarding consistent players and top performers. It's also flawed, imperfect, and could use much more iteration, but I think that this is a step in the right direction. So share your thoughts, and if you like this idea, share it with others. I'll see you next time. Until then, stay safe, stay happy, and stay breezy.